Some presences move through the world like an unexpected shift in temperature. Wherever they appear, the entire atmosphere seems to realign. It's not about drawing attention, but about rearranging the invisible boundaries everyone quietly agrees not to cross. People sense the disturbance, but can't quite explain why they remember a feeling long after forgetting the face. Their responses get tangled, drawn in, yet uneasy, torn between fascination and a subtle urge to look away from something that doesn't fit any known pattern. What becomes clear, once the dust of confusion settles, is that not every life is meant to blend in. Certain spirits come wired with a kind of internal frequency that pulls reality out of its comfort zone, inviting new questions nobody else dares to ask. There's no handbook for those who append expectations just by existing. Only a strange, electric honesty that's impossible to package or pin down. In every silent moment after the commotion, it's obvious. The energy that unsettles is the same energy that awakens, and those who witness it are forever changed, even if they never admit why. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. Not everyone comes into the world with the same quiet intuition that bends reality around their presence. Long before language ever caught up, signals were already being exchanged. Those subtle, uncanny instincts that could tune into what wasn't being said, picking up the silent choreography unfolding behind closed doors. Even the youngest seemed to notice something in the air, following the trace of a mystery they couldn't name. Observers sometimes labeled this depth as something ancient, something that stood apart from ordinary timelines, though their explanations always came laced with uncertainty, as if reaching for meaning in the dark. As this moment unfolds, a sharper understanding is cutting away years of tangled stories, clearing a path that was waiting to be found. There's an unwritten script at work in close circles, a guidebook of tactics and quiet calculations, hidden in plain sight. Those who have lingered nearest, carrying the illusion of loyalty, have often drawn their own conclusions about what to do with a heart that refuses to harden. The truth that begins to surface feels like a revelation wrapped in a jolt of recognition, a twist that exposes the silent power plays masquerading as care. Every time patience was extended or secrets were shared, an invisible ledger was kept, recording trust as if it were a currency to be spent or traded. Moments of honesty became reference points for others to exploit, turning private struggles into cautionary tales whispered behind closed doors. What makes this pattern so complex is how openness has become a double-edged sword, one side glowing with purpose, the other sharpened by those who seek advantage. Recalling the times hope was spoken aloud, only to watch those words turned into shadows by another's skepticism. As achievements quietly gathered strength, some began rewriting the story before it was finished, framing growth as mere happenstance. The echo of this strategy can be heard in every space where closeness became a platform for silent competition, even among those trusted most. You are here for a reason. If you feel the call, answer it. Click Join to unlock exclusive content, deep insights, and a powerful community. This isn't just a membership, it's an awakening. Step into your divine purpose. Join the chosen. It's remarkable how often those who claim deep affection gradually attempt to paint over the vibrant strokes that first drew them in, quietly urging a shift toward something less unpredictable, easier to define, closer to their own familiar patterns. Suggestions for adjustment are offered with polished smiles, often framed as gentle nudges for improvement. Yet beneath the surface, the refrain echoes unchanged. The genuine self is always deemed excessive, a puzzle to be reworked. There's a point where the script pauses, when that nagging question, woven into countless conversations and silent judgments, surfaces again. Not through harsh words, but as a persistent undertone, heard in advice from relatives, in the subtle critiques of friends, in the chorus of unspoken rules. Blending in is vital, connection is compulsory, standing apart must be fixed. Through these layers, a storyline unfolds that casts independence and careful connection as flaws in need of fixing. The value of deep silence, the instinct to observe rather than join the crowd, The refusal to gather acquaintances for the sake of numbers. These qualities are misread as obstacles, not strengths. The framework measuring worth by the breadth of social ties could never grasp that this kind of quiet detachment wasn't a fault. It was an anchor. While much of the world celebrated easy interaction, another, far more demanding journey was quietly taking shape, calling for a different kind of sensitivity. What seemed like aimless distance or retreat from the crowd was never punishment, but a subtle sorting out. In the backdrop, the quiet was already carving out a unique path. Those evenings filled with one's own thoughts, the gentle refusal of invitations, the quiet contentment in solitary moments, all served as silent milestones, not signs of defeat. Each act of self-preservation pointed toward a threshold beyond the ordinary, a call to meet something deeper than routine companionship could offer. Blessed by His grace? Click Super Thank You and give $20 to spread His light. Your gift plants seeds that grow His kingdom. Be the blessing. There's a tug-of-war inside, a faint debate that questions whether those quieter instincts are marks of something lacking, as if a preference for personal space was a signal to be fixed. That subtle voice challenging your nature isn't born from within. It's a residue left by those who insisted that their own blueprint for belonging was universal, never once considering a map drawn with different lines. Here's where the irony sharpens. The moment clarity begins to dawn is the same moment the old story starts to unravel. Those pushing for you to conform, setting standards as if only one path exists, have, without realizing it, been using your life as a silent ruler for their own journeys. Every attempt to nudge you closer to their way of living was really an indirect way of checking their own bearings, quietly seeking proof that true freedom could exist without a constant search for applause. In trying to mold your actions to fit their limited world, they were actually studying a living paradox. Someone moving through life with authenticity as the only guide. It's a pattern so reliable it almost feels orchestrated. Once noticed, it becomes impossible to ignore. Sometimes, a passing suggestion from someone else would linger, a hint dropped like a seed. Yet, when the inner compass quietly aligned with those possibilities and progress began, something shifted in the room. Achievements arrived almost as if summoned, unfolding naturally while others watched with a blend of disbelief and envy. Where effort had tangled others in circles, ease became a companion on this journey, and the reactions of onlookers grew more conflicted as the distance between their struggles and your unfolding path grew clearer. There's a distinct presence that follows certain individuals, one that unsettles as much as it intrigues. In their company, familiar ground feels altered, assumptions begin to lose their footing. Attempts to explain away this phenomenon with convenient labels or random chants never quite land, because the evidence of something different keeps resurfacing in subtle but undeniable ways. Beneath the surface, the explanation is both accessible and elusive. Most approach new challenges burdened by an inner script, measuring every step, bracing for mistakes, and collecting the approval of others like badges. Some, though, step forward with a clean slate, propelled by wonder rather than anxiety. This openness dissolves barriers that others fight to overcome, inviting growth to unfold without the constraints of self-doubt. It's this contrast that gives rise to what many perceive as unexplainable progress. While one group wrestles with invisible anchors, another moves as if buoyed by an unseen current. Success, in this context, becomes a natural consequence rather than a hard-won prize. Observers are left grappling with confusion, unsure how to reconcile such ease with the narrative that says all achievement must come through hardship. This effect rarely passes unnoticed. People raised on the belief that value is earned through adversity often find themselves discomforted, even agitated, by those who achieve without apparent struggle. Instead of embracing the possibility that another way might exist, many turn competitive, measuring themselves against standards they never chose, and quietly resenting the one who refuses to play by their rules. The pattern repeats, growing more apparent with time. Relationships are shaped by this difference. Dynamics change as soon as it's clear that identity isn't constructed from public victories or the applause of peers. Those accustomed to using outward signs as proof of self-worth grow uneasy when confronted with a person whose sense of self flows from a deeper, private well. As new interests are explored and boundaries dissolve, what emerges is a mosaic that defies simple explanation. Diverse talents, unexpected passions, and the capacity to dwell in emotional or intellectual depths unsettle those who prefer life in neat categories. The world's tendency to demand simple definitions fails in the presence of such layered existence. All of this leads to a peculiar tension. Individuals who pride themselves on their intuition, on their ability to read people, discover that familiar tools no longer work. The usual shortcuts to understanding fall short. Instead of satisfaction, there is only the itch of an unsolved riddle, a reminder that complexity is not an error, but a feature that calls for new kinds of attention. In the end, what remains is a living paradox. A person who is neither here nor there, impossible to summarize, always slightly out of reach. This resistance to being boxed in is not a deliberate act of rebellion, but the organic result of moving through the world with sincerity and inner freedom. Those who cannot accept this ambiguity will always find themselves staring at missing pieces, left to wonder what it is they're truly looking at. A subtle restraint often emerges in interactions, not from insincerity but from the quiet recognition that most environments cannot contain the fullness of certain minds or hearts. It becomes second nature to share only what the moment can bear, dosing out fragments of one's inner landscape according to the listener's capacity. This gives rise to a strange illusion. Everyone assumes they've glimpsed the center, when in truth, only the outermost circles are ever shown. There are times when the function of a life becomes unmistakably clear. Not in abstract, but in practice, a living illustration, quietly challenging others to reconsider what's possible when growth flows from self-acceptance instead of ceaseless striving. Genuine humility, the absence of comparison, and a deep-rooted certainty that fulfillment wells up from within. All of this becomes a kind of silent curriculum for those watching. The world, in its own enigmatic way, hopes that such an example will awaken a similar resonance in others. Yet, the lesson too often goes unseen, lost in the blur of ordinary days. It's at this crossroads that another dynamic comes into focus, a recurring sequence that, over time, becomes almost predictable. When natural distance grows between paths, when circumstances or energy shifts pull connections apart, the simplest explanation is offered: unwillingness to conform, a refusal to participate, a failure to meet expectation. Rarely is it noticed that difference was always the invitation, not an accusation, a signpost, not a wall. Beneath the surface, social ties take on new dimensions. Those who once lingered close, drawn by a sense of understanding, have been quietly collecting fragments. Details about hopes, routines, hidden longings. These fragments don't remain idle. Instead, they circulate, passed along unwittingly by people still wrestling with their own histories and unspoken battles. Through this, vulnerabilities are inadvertently handed over to those less concerned with growth than with leverage, shifting the balance of former bonds. There's a kind of curriculum written for certain souls, one that tests boundaries not through crisis, but through constant exposure to the lessons of trust and discernment. Here, another pattern emerges, one that brings clarity to why certain connections have always felt fraught, as if every encounter was an arena disguised as a conversation. Extending understanding and offering repeated chances isn't naivete. It's a reflection of seeing value even where others see only conflict. Yet, this very openness draws out those skilled in hierarchies, individuals who define safety through dominance, not kinship. Those most resistant are often the ones who crave order, who need to know where everyone stands. They come prepared for opposition, expecting to be shown their limits, and when that doesn't happen, they misread respect for weakness. The very act of treating each person with equal regard, refusing to play games of status or power, disorients them. In this, another paradox is born. Authenticity, instead of soothing old wounds, becomes a challenge to those who have never known any other way to relate. The cycle continues. Intimacy breeds study, study breeds rumor, and rumor finds its way to those who seek advantage rather than understanding. The lesson, hidden in all these exchanges, is that true strength is never in domination, but in refusing to become what others expect, no matter how hard they push. There's a strange irony in how open-heartedness and trust become magnets for misunderstanding. The very qualities that bring clarity to others, seeing through their facades, offering genuine encouragement, and believing in second chances, are recast as weaknesses by those more comfortable with hidden agendas. The belief that transparency signals inexperience, that trusting souls are simply unaware, and that kindness is a sign of naivete, shapes a subtle but relentless pressure to shrink. Rather than seeing honesty as strength, many interpret it as a lack of strategy, never suspecting that wisdom can exist without armor. What makes this entire arrangement even more convoluted is the double standard at its center. The same individuals who downplay sincerity in public find themselves quietly returning, seeking the steadiness and insight only a clear conscience can offer. They seek support when their own illusions unravel, but quickly revert to criticism once comfort returns. They turn a blind eye to their own dependency, using another's openness as both lifeline and evidence of supposed inadequacy. Over time, this breeds a constant second-guessing of one's own intuition, a lingering uncertainty that has woven itself into the background noise of everyday thought. Yet, outside the view of ordinary life, a greater process has been gathering momentum. Without announcement or spectacle, invisible helpers have been observing, weighing, and quietly intervening. Subtle realignments begin, distances grow, priorities shift, and those who were once ever-present begin to fade from the landscape. Sometimes this departure is barely noticeable. A few missed gatherings, less frequent conversation, invitations lost in the shuffle. Other times, the shift is seismic. Sudden changes, unforeseen moves, or stark revelations that dissolve old ties instantly. These separations, though rarely dramatic, are anything but random. There's an intelligence at work, steering the course of events so that old energies can no longer linger where they are not meant to grow. Connections that once felt permanent quietly loosen their grip, making way for the next phase of evolution. The pattern isn't punishment, but a necessary clearing, a reordering that protects what is sacred and prepares the ground for new experiences aligned with a deeper calling. All of this serves to reveal the mysterious mechanics of growth and spiritual movement. While it may feel as though these changes happen in isolation, each shift is a signal, a sign that something larger is orchestrating what cannot be managed by willpower alone. The gentle untangling of past relationships is not loss, but a redirection. It's a reminder that genuine progress requires the space to flourish, free from the shadows of old expectations and the limits of those unwilling to rise alongside you. Certain encounters in life are anything but random. Each challenging relationship, every complex family tie, is part of a larger structure, a blueprint shaped not by chance, but by a mysterious, precise design. These aren't just difficult personalities. They're teachers and catalysts, positioned to force critical decisions about where to direct your time, care, and energy. As this unseen process unfolds, what's being dismantled isn't simply connection with difficult people, but entire cycles of inherited obligation and unseen debts, many of which trace back further than memory can reach. The old agreements that kept you tethered to stories no longer yours to carry are finally dissolving, replaced by the first breaths of true freedom. The truth about some of these connections is about to become impossible to ignore. The pain of that truth can be sharp, revealing the ways others tried, sometimes subtly, to sculpt you into someone else. Genuine intelligence was doubted, not because it was absent, but because it refused to play by the rules of control and manipulation. Criticism came disguised as guidance, and every attempt to redraw your identity was less about your shortcomings and more about another's discomfort with their own limitations. In the end, what stings most for those who tried to reshape your core isn't any particular loss. It's the unyielding presence of the real self, still intact after countless attempts at redesign. Decades of subtle pressure, repeated efforts to mold your expression, and the endless search for reasons to diminish your worth. All of it met, again and again, by an inner reality that never gave way. Arriving at this clarity is no small thing. The energy spent enduring manipulation, the quiet ache of seeing love twisted by insecurity, and the wave of relief that follows every letting go. These feelings tangle together, complex and bittersweet. Underneath them all, a recognition surfaces. The battles weren't just about personalities or private histories, but a reflection of greater tides at work. The push and pull of these dramas mirrored a contest between forces seeking to trap humanity in repetition and those inviting true evolution. The most defining mark of true inner victory is found not in visible achievements, but in the silent corridors of the soul where nobody else can see. In those hidden moments, when everything seems to close in on you, when hope and fear sit together at the same table, the questions that echo inside are the true tests. Is it still worth going forward? I've risked so much. What happens now? These are challenges that no outsider ever hears, and every unanswered question quietly forges a new ring of patience. In these hours, the deepest transformation doesn't come from the blows you endure from others, but from the silent reckonings you face alone. The attacks from the outside merely force you to the surface, but the true metamorphosis happens when you are left alone with your own shadows. This inner labor gradually unravels invisible chains. The same shadows that once threatened your existence become unlikely guides. The pressure that adversaries tried to use against you, in a strange twist, ends up lifting you higher. Even in the moments when the blows feel their hardest, a quiet intuition is born, a sense that everything is unfolding for a reason. The truest part of your identity rises to the surface, independent of anyone's labels, slander, or praise. Where others tried to exile you, you found real freedom. Because true freedom is never measured by how the world sees you, but by how deeply you are rooted within yourself. The financial wisdom gained on this path has little to do with numbers and everything to do with understanding the energy of the human spirit. For too long, money was seen as a symbol of fear, scarcity, and competition. But you learned to see it as a mirror, a companion, not a prize. Every resource that reached you was an echo of your intention and the energy you offered. While others clawed for wealth, you discovered the meaning of giving and expansion. Every material opportunity that came your way became a key for breaking another chain, transforming another life, amplifying a voice that had long been silenced. It's no accident that those who moved with fear were stunned by your generosity. The more they clung to their idea of possession, the more trapped they became. You, on the other hand, unlocked new doors with the lightness of sharing. The poverty mindset had run deep in the collective memory, and breaking that cycle required nothing short of radical internal change. You became one of those who broke it simply by the way you lived. Your collective transformation manifested not just in your personal accomplishments, but in the new communities growing around you. Those who shared your vision appeared, one by one. Some from distant places, some from nearby, some who had never even met you but responded to your energy all the same. Each new connection sparked a chain reaction of possibilities in other lives. Loneliness was no longer destiny, but just a legend of the past. The true isolation belonged to those who were still afraid to lose what little they had. This new paradigm, spreading through society, became a model that serves not only you, but all of humanity. The next generation of leaders began to choose cooperation over competition. You emerged from a past woven with struggle and crisis, but you never allowed it to harden you. Even in the thick of adversity, you showed what it means to produce hope and serve as a compass in someone else's storm. This wasn't just a tale of triumph or heroism. It was the story of transcending personal limitation to guide a collective awakening. The visibility that was once seen as a threat is now a megaphone for the common good. Those who wanted to keep you small have witnessed the world using your example as a source of inspiration. While they remained trapped in their narrow perspectives, you became a leader who could ignite the light in others as well. You proved that transformation can begin with the determination of one person and ripple out to affect thousands. In the silence of true power, new responsibilities are born. This strength isn't measured by outward victories, but by inner clarity. Now, nothing shakes you easily. The chaos others try to unleash can no longer turn you from your path. Your roots are no longer in the storms outside, but in deep self-awareness and alignment with the universal laws of existence. Life has shown you again and again. The real battle is never outside, it's always within. And now, you walk not as a faded legend of the past, but as a pioneer of a new era. Those who look to you are not searching for a savior, but see themselves reflected in your journey. Your real legacy is not the accomplishments you leave behind, but the unseen changes you set in motion in other lives. The greatest meetings happen in quiet moments. The most profound transformations begin where no one is watching. You found the secret of feeling whole in solitude, even in the midst of crowds. Your story is now a link in an endless chain, inspiring new journeys in countless hearts. Because true chosenness is never about privilege. It's about responsibility and the courage to invite others into the light of their own potential.